The Chargers, the team to beat. It would seem that way after Monday night, but that gives the Broncos a nice opportunity next Sunday against the Bolts in Los Angeles. So it's all still there in front of the Broncos, even after that tough loss on Sunday. We'll dive into that, the aftermath of the leverage call, and some thoughts from my rewatch of the game, especially on the defense, on this edition of Denver Football After Dark. Let's get that slide up, shall we? In the wake of a Monday night doubleheader, I like Monday night doubleheader nights. I wish there were more of them because I like a little late night football. Of course, if there were more Monday night doubleheaders, there would probably be a lot more Bronco Monday night football games and a lot more Monday night football games at home because there are only but so many teams that can host those 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain Time games. But regardless, it was good to watch the games tonight. Bucks with a thriller over the Texans. Texans 0-2. Colts 2-0. Chiefs 0-2. Chargers 2-0. We do see some outlier results early on in the season, but those don't feel like outliers. Those feel like they might stick. As for the Broncos, well, the advantage of the Chargers winning is now they've got an opportunity right in front of them next Sunday. Go to LA, get a win, and guess what? Tied for first place. And if they get a win next week, then everything's forgotten from that bitter loss last week or last Sunday to Indianapolis. Mace here to take you into the night, Monday night into Tuesday morning, this edition of Denver Football After Dark. How are we feeling after that? After week 2? You feeling any better about the Broncos? I'm feeling better about their offense. Feeling better about Troy Franklin. Feeling good about their pass protection, which didn't allow Bo Nix to be hit. And if we're going by the raw numbers through 2 games, is leading the league in pass blocking efficiency. If you go by the data compiled by Pro Football Focus, they've only allowed 8 pressures so far this season. That's the fewest in the NFL for those teams who've played 2 games so far this season. Arizona's allowed 10, and they've allowed 10 pressures in fewer pass plays than the Broncos. So 8 pressures allowed for the Broncos and 74 pass plays as calculated by Pro Football Focus. That's pretty good. That's not just pretty good. That's exceptional. Just as sacks are on the quarterback and the protection, you'd say at least 50% of the sacks are on the quarterback, as some very wise people told me when I was first starting to cover this sport. You can also say the same thing about pressures in general. So you have to tip the cap to Bo Nix as well for his involvement, as well as the guys up front. So things that are working, that's working. The running game, not spectacular for the most part, but not falling behind schedule as often as it did against the Titans in the first 3 quarters of that game. J.K. Dobbins did find a groove. And I think we got a hint from Sean Payton when he was talking about how he used J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. And he mentioned sticking with J.K. Dobbins because he was hot. So It's going to be a nightmare for fantasy football players, but what you're probably going to see, therefore, is the running back who gets more snaps in a given game is going to be the guy who's hot. So if RJ Harvey gets into a groove on Sunday at SoFi Stadium, it'll be RJ Harvey who gets more carries. The hot hand theory. So we may not know much from week to week as far as who's going to get more opportunities going in. It may simply come down to whoever gets uncorked the fastest will get the rock the most. So just prepare for that. Sunday, it was J.K. Dobbins. If not for that ill-fated spike, you would have been talking about a terrific game from him. The kind that you can set your watch by. Troy Franklin's emergence. It's fair to say he's wide receiver 2 now. And the way he handled things when Bo Nix got outside the pocket for that deep catch down the left sideline, I mean, that's the sort of that's the sort of timing and the sort of, you know, the sort of cohesion that comes from multiple years together. That's a quarterback and a receiver knowing each other. That's a receiver understanding what the quarterback's doing when he gets beyond structure, when he gets outside the pocket, and being able to break off, break off and know what the quarterback downfield is looking for. That's not something that happens overnight. That's something that comes together over years. And getting to see it in that way, especially down the left flank, outstanding. Franklin looks to be the real deal. I wanted to kind of start with those positives. You know, this is just as last week in a win, there were things, okay, that you weren't going to feel good about. There are things even in a loss here that you can feel good about. It's never as bad as it seems in a loss. I should say it's rarely as bad as it seems. 70-22 years ago, that was as bad as it seemed. It's rarely as bad as it seems in a loss. It's rarely as good as it seems in a win. That's one of the rules of the NFL. As for the defense, when there are trends over multiple games, that's when I take notice. When you have 4 of the last 8 games since December 1, when this defense has given up 450 plus. And now they've done it in a game where they were much closer to full strength and certainly better in personnel than they were last year, because you do have Talanoa Hufanga, you have Alex Singleton, you have Riley Moss healthy. And you see some of the same things happening that you saw against Cleveland versus the run against the Colts last December, against the Bills in January. Okay. Danger Will Robinson. The first Tyler Warren catch where he splits Sternad and Singleton. Sternad takes Jonathan Taylor out of the backfield. Singleton's trailing. At the end of the play, you see Singleton appearing to yell at Sternad. Like, that's just, it's a mess. That's what, missed assignment. They MEs as Sean Payton refers to them. I actually asked Sean Payton specifically about that when I said, okay, I sometimes I ask on Monday, I ask him about what he got from the film. And sometimes I'll ask something specific. Like sometimes I'll ask him about offensive line. I asked about the protection. I asked about the run blocking. In this case, I asked him about the missed assignments. And what he said was they were, busted some fire zone coverage and leaving the runner coming out of the backfield uncovered. I mean, you saw that with Jonathan Taylor coming there. And then he got into this is where then he just went into another direction. And it was a 2-minute answer. So Sean Payton was in another chatty mood on Monday morning. And he got into another first drive score allowed, this time a touchdown, in week 1, a field goal. He mentioned that they had the interceptions, so they're sitting there with 5 giveaways for the season, which is down at the bottom of the league. And mentioned the red zone, mentioned the red zone failings. Yeah. The thing he closed with was this. He said, "It's hard to sustain success in our league as a yo-yo team, up and down," quote unquote. And if you think about it, that sort of is where the Broncos have settled. And it's actually it kind of defines where the Broncos have been. In the end sum, if you look at Sean Payton's now 37 games on the job, including the playoffs, he's got 19 wins and he's got 18 losses. I mean, that's 1 game above 500. And it's a bit better. Hey, you say take the first 6 games off when you started 1-5. It certainly looks a little bit better because that would take you to 18-13. So certainly that's progress, but still on the whole, that's sort of playing games with it. And Sean Payton is very much you are what your record says you are person. And the record says you're 1-1. The overall record since he got here would say that you're 19-18. That's what he would lean on. The record is what, you are what your record says you are. I mean, that's very much a Parcellsism. And we know how much Sean Payton kind of leans on the wisdom of Bill Parcells and how much he learned from him working for him for 3 years in Dallas back in the 2000s. So, and you look at it so far, you've seen 2 games. On the positive side, you get an indication now that the Broncos are capable of winning games with their offense, because what we saw for 3 quarters yesterday was an offense that appears to be capable of winning a shootout if it has to. You don't like not capitalizing on the opportunities in the fourth quarter, but you like the consistency with which they moved the ball in the first 3 quarters and the balance they had for much of those first 3 quarters. That's kind of how it's supposed to work. Okay, they didn't involve Cortland Sutton much, but that's going to change from week to week. Some days you're going to see more of Court and less of Troy. Some days you're going to see more of Marvin, less of Troy, less of Court. It's going to depend on who's getting open, what the matchups are, etc. It's going to change from week to week. That's also part of how this is supposed to work. If you've got more ways to win, that's healthy. But at the same time, you do want to have some games where this whole thing comes together. And when you're playing a team like the Chargers next week, even though we'll see kind of what happens with the state of Khalil Mack after he was injured Monday night, this is still a team where you're going to have to be on your P's and Q's. And if you've got either the offense or defense not firing on all cylinders, it will be tough to win next week. I mean, you lost to them twice last year. The first game in Denver, the score was deceptive. That was a very decisive Chargers win. The game in Inglewood in December, that was one where they gradually pulled away. Broncos came out strong, especially on the ground. That was the run the ball on the play sheet game. Let him get away. Let him get away as the game went on. Being half a team isn't going to fly. Having a major special teams gaffe. By the way, 2 weeks in a row, there's been a significant special teams gaffe. That's not going to fly. That's a concern as well, that we talked about Marvin Mims with the muff in week 1, and then, of course, the leverage penalty. And, yeah, you can debate whether leverage could have been called earlier. It is a fair debate to have. What I don't think is a debate, and even Sean Payton won't debate this, is that leverage deserved to be called when the Broncos committed the penalty there at the end of the game.
But that's on me in that situation. And look, it's not on Darren, it's not on Tillman. But the 60-yard field goal attempt, it's different. The alignment got wrong, and the call was correct. You can, as a defensive line, you can push down on the back of the center and offensive lineman. You can push down on the back, specifically if you're going to go internally on the guards. You can push down. You can't push the jump. So a common block would be to push down with one player and then to clear jump with another. The alignment got mixed up between Tillman and one of the other tackles. The call was correct. That was leveraging. You can't put your hands and to elevate yourself off one of your own guys or off one of the opponent players. But my big regret flying home was, that's more for a closer field goal. That's more for a gimme than a 60-yard attempt, and that's on me.
It's on him. I mean, you appreciate him taking the blame, but one thing that seems to be happening in a lot of games is him putting it on himself. And also, this is another thing here. The last time they played the Chargers, of course, last December, there was the game management snafu there at the end of the first half that, of course, led to the fair catch free kick. A week later in Cincinnati, remember not going for 2 there at the end of regulation. They went for 1. That seemed a curious decision at the time, especially from a coach who tends to pride himself on his aggression. And then you go to week 1 last week, certainly, feeling like maybe they should have stuck with the run a little bit more, a little bit too pass heavy, kind of puts that on himself. And now this, so it's, you appreciate the reflection and the humility and the willingness to kind of look at himself, but at the same time, you want to say, okay, Sean, let's get this right in the moment. You're a really good head coach, really smart. But you do, it's like, okay, what led to thinking you needed to go for the all-out block there from 60 against a kicker who never hit from that distance? Like, sometimes you can overthink things. I'm guilty of it. I think we all are. And this actually comes less down to coaching and I think more down to a human nature thing. I think we can all empathize with that. Sometimes we just try to, put things a little too much, try to put a little too much of our own stamp on it. And sometimes you just got to keep it simple. Anyway. and all of it came and all of it came together. You know, all the colors on the field, bad rainbow, to use a Simpsons reference. So, Braxton, I hope this bitter loss only fuels the team and they can be more aggressive. Well, not necessarily be more aggressive, but just be a little smarter. You know, in that case, at the end for Sean Payton, just be a little kind of smarter and prudent. Say, okay, I don't have to do the big rush there. J.K. Dobbins, don't spike the ball. I mean, I've joked about this, but my daughter's probably heard it too much from her old man over the years. Don't spike the ball before you cross the goal line. It's one of my cliches in life. So she will probably end up, if she has a kid, probably end up saying it to her kid someday because she heard it from me, just the way I quote my dad. So it's true. It's true on the football field, and it's true in life. Don't celebrate until you've gotten the points, until you've gotten to the end zone. Then you can dance. Then you can spike the ball, but not a moment before. It's a good sensible advice for life. And it sapped the momentum on that drive. I got to admit, I really thought that after that 23-yard run and before the spike, I thought that was going to be the game-winning drive right there. O-line was pushing forward. They had the authority, had the momentum, and then I've done that twice tonight. So anyway, any idea if Sean is going to keep Evan on the field for more snaps or still in recovery mode? Need to get the Joker out there. I imagine, assuming he's healthy, I imagine you'll see him a little more. It would on Sunday. I mean, it would be nice to get him more involved. I mean, I think at this point, you'd have to look at the production for Evan Engram so far through 2 weeks. You have to look at, say that 4 catches for 33 yards. Objectively, that's a disappointment through 2 games. I mean, you're talking about him being on pace for 34 receptions. I know it's early, but he's never had fewer than 44 catches in a season. And that was in 2019 when he only played 8 games. So certainly it's a small sample size. Let's let the season play out, let a little more play out. This is why I tend to wait until you get to the quarter pole before really having a lot of these discussions and sitting back and kind of saying, okay, got to do more of this, less of that, what's missing here, so forth. But 2 games in, they aren't getting it to Engram enough. And the snap count, by the way, is at 38% so far. 38% of the offensive snaps. And here's another stat for you. Evan Engram in his career has never played fewer than 67%. At least like in the games he's played. If you go through in the games he's played, that's how it's calculated. For example, he played 11 games for the Giants in 2018, and in those 11 games, he played 67% of the snaps. He's never had a snap count below 67% in his career on offense, and so far, through 2 games, it's 38%. So he's not on the field as much, and he's not getting the ball as much. So that's something I wonder if they take a look at and try to remedy. Now, again, he had the calf injury in week 1. So you say, all right, that hindered him then. He had 26 snaps in week 1, but he had 25 snaps in week 2. Now, his percentage did go up from 34% to 43%. The Broncos had fewer offensive snaps in total in week 2 than week 1, so he played a greater percentage and one fewer snap, but still not exactly what you'd want in general. Who spikes a ball that is not scored? Head scratch from the vet. Yeah, that's another thing. I think, Devin, you make a good point. If it's a rookie, you kind of forgive it and say, okay, that's a rookie mistake. 6-year vet, senior member of that room, leader of the room. You're disappointed in that. It's fair to be disappointed in that. So, Wesley, need to see what Dre Greenlaw brings to the table. Oh yes. Oh boy. So, I've got the. I always say with Pro Football Focus, I'm not a fan of the Pro Football Focus grades because I think they're subjective. I do use their raw data. That I think you can get something from their raw data. I don't, but again, raw data, fine. Grades, we can debate that. I tend to have a dim view of something that's more subjective, like grades. I'm a data guy. I'm a math guy. So if we go through here and take a look at times targeted, okay? Alex Singleton, 3 times targeted, 56 yards allowed. Justin Sternad, 3 times targeted, 70 yards allowed. Both of them, by the way, 3 catches on 3 times targeted. So 6 times targeted, 6 catches, 126 yards for Alex Singleton and Justin Sternad. And of course, the visual I still can't get out of my mind is watching the all-22 of Tyler Warren's first big catch and seeing Warren just go whoop right between the two, and Sternad flare out and cover Taylor short, and then Singleton is trailing Warren and trailing him badly. I mean, just has no shot at the play. And safety help arrives well too late, and then it's toast. Tyler Warren's going to be a problem for opponents for a long time. I think you saw that game. He's really freaking good. He's already really freaking good. You can sense the baton of tight end being passed. Like, that Travis Kelce, he's exiting the stage. I've mentioned on a previous show, his per catch average the last few years has been going steadily down. He's he's aging. It's natural. He's still effective, but he's effective in a different way, more of a short area target. But you can sense the torch being passed to a new generation of tight ends. Guys like Trey McBride, who we saw in the joint practice this summer. Certainly Brock Bowers. He's going to be a problem for the Broncos for many years. And Tyler Warren might be another one of those guys who causes a lot of problems. At least the Broncos don't have to see him every year, because they don't play the Colts every year, but might see him in some big games, potentially playoff games perhaps, if both teams are in the postseason. And he has the potential to be quite impactful. There are probably 2 guys on the Colts right now you have to know where they are at all times, and those are Warren and Jonathan Taylor. And Taylor, man. That was a problem. Let him get wide open way too much. And also, as you saw when DJ Jones dove and missed, all it takes is one missed tackle. One miss, and it was off to the races. That was actually that's a concern, because one of the things that I saw watching the game, and it was a concern of the inside linebackers, is that at the second level, it looked the way it did in Buffalo last January. And that was something that was a bit of a concern. Talanoa Hufanga played well. Talanoa Hufanga played really well, no doubt. But you've got some issues against the run that are popping up right now. On the positive side, on the defense, also this is worth noting, and I think this is interesting. The guy who had the highest pass rush win rate on Sunday for the Broncos was Dondre Tillman. 25% was his pass rush win rate, just a tick above Nick Bonito at 22.2%. So if not for that penalty, we're talking about Tillman having a terrific game in terms of generating pressure. And he even had a good game against the run as well. He's off to a very nice start. I want to sort of give him a shout out because I don't want. I'm just kind of doing my part here to kind of make sure that he's not undeservedly castigated here for that one moment. I'd also say the same thing about Will Lutz. Okay, the miss, incredibly bad timing on the doink. He's 55 of 59 from inside 50 as a Bronco. And 2 of those misses are blocks, both by the Chiefs, interestingly enough. So when it's not blocked, he's 55 of 57 from inside of 50. Now, yeah, it's rather unfortunate that one of the 2 misses is at the worst possible time there in a high leverage situation. But you'll take your chances with Will Lutz when he's got that history of accuracy to him. Just bad timing on when the miss happened. And it's sort of thing. I think back. It's almost interesting that I had the same reaction to Lutz missing as I did to Marvin Mims muffing the punt a week earlier. When Mims muffed that punt against the Titans, that was the first moment where I thought these guys might lose the game. Because it was like, okay, this is something that is a reliable component about the team. Marvin Mims Jr. fielding a punt. Like that's you just assume it's going to be there because he's so good at that. And when he muffs it, like, oh gosh, even this thing that you just know is going to work, it's always fine. Even that's failing. And I had the same reaction when Lutz doinked upright, like, oh boy, uh-oh. If that's not working, if that's going askew, look out. And then, of course, Shane Steichen tried to give it to the Broncos by going all Nathaniel Hackett with his play calling and his game mismanagement, which bothers me as a football enthusiast / observer, because what are you doing, man? This is why every team should have a game management coach to almost to just provide an electric shock when the coach is doing that, just buzz him, hey, you're doing it wrong, Shane. Do something else, call a pass, Like just something to tell him you're screwing this up. You're thinking wrong. I mean, I would even like a couple of years ago when Sean Payton was about to call timeout in Kansas City. Like if I could have hit a button to just go and it like to keep him from calling the timeout, like I would have done, I would have done that. Like just, mash it. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You're not supposed to do that, man. Oh gosh. That's the only, that is the only type of coaching job I could have would be game management coach. That is literally the only thing I could do is like timeouts, game flow, that sort of thing. I will never claim to be able to like coach technique or anything like that, but I can manage clock, game flow, most efficient practices. That I can do. That I've done a lot of research on over the years. So, how come Lutz's kicks curved and Colts kickers' balls didn't curve? Seems like Irsay had something to do with it. Well, or as my late father and I used to say, when I was a kid, we used to joke about having, and this was in basketball, when you'd have shots that would go through at one end and they spin out the other end. We would joke that there were these invisible Martians that would be sitting on one basket. They would prevent them from going in. And like if you'd see like about 4 or 5 shots spin out, and be like, oh, the Martians are up to it, and sort of maybe the Martians were having some impact there. I don't know. It would be appropriate to think about that because Lucas Oil was actually designed in part to be an optimal Final Four site. It was the first stadium that was designed to have the court in the middle of the stadium and use every seat in the upper decks and the lower bowl as part of the Final Four seating configuration. Is for a long time they used to just use like part of, when they were being domes, they'd use just part of it and curtain off part of it. And then at Lucas Oil was specifically designed to use the entire seating bowl to maximize capacity. And ever since then, when they've done the Final Fours, they've used the entire, when they have it, they just put the court in the middle and they use the entire seating bowl. And Lucas Oil, but Lucas Oil also was specifically designed, the aesthetics of it were designed to be a field house on steroids, like an old Indiana basketball field house. If I did my stand-up on Saturday from Hinkle Field House on the Butler University campus, and the Lucas Oil aesthetically is modeled like with the windows at one end and the brick. Lucas Oil is modeled after Hinkle Fieldhouse. It's like it's a nod to that type of architecture. So it's appropriate that when you say that, and the little something to keep the field goal going through, and it makes me think of the little basketball story that my dad and I had when I was a kid. So, and if I know if mom's watching, she appreciates that. So. Anyway, Denver football after dark here on this. Now we're in Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning here. Broncos in second place in the AFC West, tied with the Las Vegas Raiders. Those Kansas City Chiefs are in last at 0-2, staring up at everybody else. I gotta say, there's got to be a little Schadenfreude. And I don't think just elsewhere in the AFC West, but I think around the entire NFL. I think there's very much Chiefs fatigue. And I think people are happy to see that. Question coming in about can J.K. Dobbins provide an edge in this matchup since he played with Harbaugh in the offseason? Honestly, I mean, we see things like that all the time with players changing teams. that tends to be a little bit overrated in terms of just how much they can provide, because they're going to get most of that from film anyway. And in terms of like what intel could actually be there, checks, calls, etc., they're changing all that from in the course of the off season. So there's not much that J.K. Dobbins is really going to be able to pass along that's going to be of real tangible value that could really help. Now, if a player is there during the season, during that season, and then gets waived and comes in, that actually has more value than a player who was there the previous season. And in fact, sometimes you will see, and Bill Belichick would do this from time to time, he'd bring in a player that was on like a practice squad of a team that he was going to play, and he'd bring him in for a couple of weeks just to kind of get him out there. But part of it was to pick his brain. So anyway, that's just something to that's something to think about. I think respectfully, Crumble, I think that notion of what JK can bring, it's a little bit overstated. So Geno Smith, 0 for 10 the fourth quarter against the Chargers. There's definitely, if anything, one of the things we saw tonight, there's a difference between Justin Herbert and Geno Smith. Justin Herbert is joining that elite class of quarterbacks. Geno's somewhere in the next tier or that middle tier. He is who he is. And he was an upgrade for the Raiders, and he gives the Raiders a chance. I look at the Raiders, and I had them picked to go 8-9. I think they're right there, 8 wins, 9 wins. That's what they look like to me. They're probably they'll be the best last place team in football. They still look that way to me. So nothing really changed on that tonight. I was disappointed in their inability to finish drives. That was something. Disappointed in their inability to capitalize off Khalil Mack's injury. But Chargers, one thing you got to say for the Chargers is losing Rashawn Slater and losing Khalil Mack, and they have not missed a beat. So at some point it may catch up to them, but 2 games, the 2 games, one against the Chiefs, one on the road against the Raiders, hasn't happened yet. We'll see if it does on Sunday when they take on the Broncos. A lot of people talking about Nick Wright. Oh boy. Nick Wright does he still think the Chiefs are Super Bowl bound? Well, I mean, there has been a team that started 0-2 and won it all. Go back to, for example, the Cowboys in 1993, but they were 0-2 with an asterisk because they started off 0-2 because Emmitt Smith was holding out. There's really no such caveat for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. So it's kind of fun to see the Chiefs 0-2. Sort of the little. It is the wavering of my impartiality, I guess. But again, it is Chiefs fatigue. Ready to see somebody else atop the division. I think 9 seasons in a row as AFC West champions is enough. Time to see someone else atop that heap. So, anyway, Denver football after dark here on this Thursday morning. Are the Chargers the new Chiefs? Let's see more than 2 weeks and a 2-0 start first. Is it possible they are the team to beat in the AFC West? Well, that's the title of this show. At this moment, if we're talking about 2 weeks in, early in the season, first impressions, they look like the most complete team in the AFC West. Start with Justin Herbert, who, I mean, it's fair to say, right now, best quarterback in the AFC West. He's playing the best football of the 4 QBs. I think objectively that's true. And he was already pushing in that first tier of QBs atop the league anyway. So it's not like there was a heck of a leap for him to join that class. But what you're seeing is a complete team developing, a well-coached team as well. So they're going to be tough. Look, Broncos lost both games to them last year, and despite the scores, both were pretty decisive. They were no doubters. They did not go down to the last second. Broncos were comprehensively beaten in those contests. There's some distance the Broncos had to close between them and the Chargers, and the Chargers did not get worse from where they were last year. They're a better team than they were last December. The Broncos are too, but the Chargers have improved. So it's possible the Broncos are still as far behind the Chargers as they were in December, even though the Broncos have a better roster now than they did. And yes, Rob, Ladd McConkey is one player who has started to give the Broncos problems. So, anyway, it was, oh boy, we got our troll here. We got our troll. But that's okay. You're keeping it clean, so I'm not really as long that's my goal. That's my rule. You know, you can talk smack. You can come in here and talk a little smack, and that's fine. Just keep it civil. But smack talk is okay. It's, you know, this is sports. I mean, there's a little trash talk that goes on. It's all right. And when you lose 29-28, and when your defense gives up 450 plus for the 4th time in the last 8 games, you got to wear it. I mean, let's see. Where do the Broncos rank in total defense? Let's get this out here. Well, that's total offense. My bad. Total defense. Let's see here. Get out the abacus. Total defense through 2 games. Dun, dun, dun. Broncos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th. Okay. Still 11th total defense so far, which isn't bad. Not where you expect, not where you're hoping they'll be, but not bad. But again, 450 plus in 4 of the last 8 games. If the Chargers have a similar game production-wise to the one they had last December, then you're going to be talking about a 9-game stretch dating back to last December where really 6 of the games would have been unsatisfactory. And one of the 3 that was satisfactory would have come against the Chiefs JV to close the last regular season. And another one of the satisfactory games would have come against Cam Ward and the Titans in Cam Ward's first start. And the other satisfactory game would have come against the Colts last December when Taylor dropped the football and when Anthony Richardson was starting. And we saw Sunday just what a difference competent quarterbacking can make for that Colts team. You take Anthony Richardson out and you put Daniel Jones in, and Jones is a guy who can hit his marks and be accurate and drop it into some tight windows, and you give him some good weapons, and Daniel Jones looked like a pretty good NFL quarterback for the second straight week. Maybe Jones is a guy that if you just give him some good ingredients, he can make you a nice meal. And he's got some good ingredients there. Pierce, Pittman, Taylor, Warren, they're quality players. I mean, especially Pittman, Warren, and Taylor. You can win with those guys. And he's got quality in front of him on the offensive line. Took Colts fans' breath away a little bit when Quentin Nelson was down for a moment, and then he was pointing to his leg. It was like, oh man, like, boy, that looks bad. And then he shook it off, and he didn't even want to leave the game, and he went out for one play, and he went back in. It was sort of the same thing with Zach Allen. At first, you thought it was serious, and then he was back in like one play later. And by the way, Zach Allen has done the Sean Payton thing, because when he was asked about his injury on the conference call on Monday, he's like, I'm not going to talk about injuries. So now he's taken on the Sean Payton approach of being like, if you ask about an injury, he's not going to say a dadgum thing. Oh boy, it's contagious. Spreading virally. So anyway. Gonna lose my mind if I don't see Sean do a shovel pass this year. Oh man, that would be fun. Want to see this Ronald Ortiz? I want to see this offense stay deeply committed to the running game, and again, Bo played this well this game. Yeah, he did. One interception tipped at the line of scrimmage. He was composed. He looked good beyond structure, accurate within the pocket. Footwork was much more settled than last week. If that's the Bo that we see going forward, he's going to be fine, and the Broncos offense is going to be fine. So, nice bounce back game based on the analytics bore that out as well. Basically, top third of the league among quarterbacks this week. Did fine. Did good. One of his top 5 games that he's had in the 20 starts that he's had so far. Top 25% of his games. So more like that. More like that would be terrific. For the most part, I thought a good play calling game from Sean Payton as well. Sticking with the run, more patient with the run, more balance. I liked starting the game. He said, I'm going to start the game with 3 runs, and of course the first one popped for a first down, but I like the idea of just coming out and saying, we're going to run the ball. We're just going to start by running it and kind of get our feet under us. Set a tone. Get the line driving forward rather than retreating. That was good. That was healthy. So I feel like offensively, the right lessons were taken from week 1. I mean, it's weird to sit here and say this after a loss, but there were a lot of things that were encouraging. So again, it's rarely as bad as it seems when you lose, and it's rarely as good as it seems when you win. Reality always ends up being somewhere in between. So, but yes, victory lap. And I've seen this elsewhere. I've seen this plenty of comments. Need Dre Greenlaw. Composed. Well, you know what, Shane? You and I are going to have to agree to disagree on that. I thought Knicks looked pretty composed back there. Ran the offense well. He's going to do things beyond structure. He's going to escape. It's not always going to be smooth, but he handled the rush well when it was there. He made good decisions. So don't know what you're looking for, man. Let's see here. Dive through the comments here. Oh, man alive. There we yep. The pressure. Not as much pressure as you got in the first game, of course. And you're gonna have to get to Justin Herbert a bit more than you got to Daniel Jones. You're gonna have to finish those rushes as well. And immediate pressure. The pressure is going to need to come from the interior. This is where I think you're talking about. This has got to be a Zach Allen game, and Zach Allen did have 3 pressures on Sunday, so I think that was a good sign for him. But the key for Herbert's going to be the interior pressure that gets there in 2-3 seconds, gets there in a hurry. Edge pressure often takes a little bit longer. So get Herbert off the spot, and then your edges can kind of finish him off. Or also use the edges to kind of stunt and twist. There was one rush that I was looking at that was successful against Daniel Jones that got him a little off kilter of Dondre Tillman kind of, stunting in and coming through one of the interior gaps and beating his man. Like, that's just more of that, using his speed to take advantage of a mismatch and get up and go up the middle. So there are going to be some opportunities there. So, I like that stat. I like that stat a lot, Michael. Nick Bonito tied with the Panthers defense with 15 pressures. PS2 update, victory lap. Here's the thing. I know y'all ask for injury updates on Monday. Rarely are we going to get tangible injury updates on Monday just because there's such a tight lid on these things. You saw him play on the ankle injury. The one thing that we did see after he had his media availability, he quickly went into the training room. The door was open. We saw him getting further treatment, further wrap on the ankle on Sunday night before the team buses left for the airport. We'll know more Wednesday. I mean, the old cliche that it's always the next day when you wake up and see how you feel. That's kind of the big thing. So that's what we're waiting to find out, how PS2 felt Monday, getting back to Denver, waking up, the adrenaline fading. How is that ankle feeling? So that's what we'll know. Surtain, by the way, it was the most he'd been thrown at in terms of most he'd been targeted 9 times in 3 years. So something that he wasn't used to. Not necessarily something that was planned. A bunch of those weren't primary reads. They were second reads. But if teams are willing to throw at him, and this is the thing. I mean, we saw Joe Burrow willing to throw in his direction because he was throwing to Jamar Chase. So expect in 2 weeks expect Jake Browning, filling in for Joe Burrow, to throw at Pat Surtain because he's going to be throwing it to Jamar Chase. In that case, it's about knowing I've got this receiver who at least is the equal of this great corner. So I can expect my guy to win those matchups. Or win his share of matchups, I should say. But a game like that, what it might do, and this is something to think about, and it could be a concern, is it might demystify Surtain in the eyes of some opposing offenses and quarterbacks. As if to say, hey, you don't have to avoid that side. You can throw on him. Sort of like the moment in Rocky IV when Rocky's fighting Drago and he cuts him, and they tell Rocky in his corner, like, he's like, you made him bleed, like he's human, he's not a machine. Kind of to tell him, hey, like you actually can get this guy, you can hurt this guy. And I'll be fascinated to see what the Chargers do with this, especially if PS2 is dealing with an ankle injury. Are they going to have no hesitation going at him? And what does this do, especially coming off a game last week where, Riley Moss struggled. Riley Moss gave up a bunch of plays and then probably should have been called for, at least for, there were some no calls. He probably should have had at least another call against him that wasn't called. So this too is a concern. So, we'll see. A lot to be concerned about on this defense. Felt good after the first game, and now you got some concerns. It's week 2, so you got time to figure things out. But a defense with Zach Allen, with Nick Bonito, and Pat Surtain. And by the way, those guys were playing last year in December and January. So yeah, you didn't have Singleton and you didn't have Hufanga until this month. And you didn't have Riley Moss healthy late last year, and you have him now. But you had Zach Allen and you had Nick Bonito and you had PS2 last December. And you still gave up 450 plus against Cleveland and Cincinnati and then Buffalo on the road. And now you've done so against the Colts. So, just saying, when you do it that often, 450 plus, 4 times in an 8-game span, and it's something that you had not done since the 4th game of 2023, it's fair to be concerned. That's all. Fair to be concerned. So I'm going to leave you with that here on this edition of Denver Football After Dark. Just we're not hitting the alarm bells here. It's week 2 going into week 3. So it's best to kind of sit back, let things play out. Let's get to the first quarter, through the first quarter of the season, hit the quarter poll before we kind of do a real progress report on where things stand. But you've got some trends from last year that, unfortunately, late last season specifically, that now we saw carry over and we saw manifest on Sunday against the Colts. And now you're coming up against the Chargers, Bengals, yes, without Joe Burrow, but still with Jamar Chase, still with T. Higgins. And Jake Browning is a quarterback who is the backup quarterback who can keep that boat afloat. He proved that 2 years ago when they went 4-3 in the games he started. He started and he kept them in the playoff race until the end. So don't think that it's going to be a walkover on Monday Night Football just because Joe Burrow's not in the game. It won't be. Yes, it definitely helps the Broncos that Burrow won't play, but that's not a Bengals team that suddenly thinks, oh man, we're dead because we don't have Burrow, because they have the demonstrated experience that they can stay in the race and win some games with Jake Browning running that system. So, and then they still have the 2 top receivers for whom they backed up the Brinks truck. So you got the Eagles, you got the Bengals, or the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Eagles. Next 3 games. And they're going to pose some challenges for this D. So the race to get better means fixing some glitches on that side of the ball. That's what I'll leave you with here on this edition of Denver Football After Dark for Monday night, heading into Tuesday morning here in what is now Chargers week, as the Broncos begin looking ahead to one of their division rivals in Los Angeles, and looking ahead to a game that could put them in a tie for first place or could put them behind the 8 ball here 3 weeks into the season at 1-2, 2 games back of the Chargers. That Chargers are looking at this game as a chance to put a hammerlock on the AFC West, to get to 3-0, to have 3 division wins, including two on the road. Broncos, though, have a chance to make up for losing in Indianapolis. If you go to LA and win, not that the Colts loss is forgotten, but you've washed that taste out of your mouth. And if you had to take a split of this 2-game road swing and say, okay, which one would you rather have? You'd certainly rather have the divisional game. So it's still there for the taking for the Broncos if they can fix a few things from what went wrong in Indianapolis on Sunday. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you enjoyed this. If you know people who like this sort of Broncos content, tell your friends about this channel. I'll have more on Tuesday in a produced video I'm going to have. Denver Football After Dark, as usual, we'll take a break on Tuesday night because it is a players off day on Tuesday. And we'll be back on Wednesday night to discuss things ramping up for the Chargers game. We'll hear from Sean Payton. We'll hear from various players in the locker room. So I'll be talking to guys then, and we'll have plenty to disseminate. So I'll be here talking about all that Wednesday night and the Thursday morning after I've gone down to Coors Field to check out the Rockies-Marlins game on Wednesday night. So as soon as I get back from that, I'll be firing things up on here to join all of y'all for another edition of Denver Football After Dark. So appreciate you joining me here on this Monday night and a Tuesday morning. And thanks for stopping by, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.